Vamos a jugar. ¿Cuántas sílabas tiene esta palabra? Una. ¿Y esta? Cuatro. ¿Qué tal esta? Cuatro. Did you get them all right? If not, that could be part of the reason why you're struggling to speak or listen in Spanish. So let's fix that. Me llamo Watson y soy tu profesor de español. Les doy la bienvenida al canal. Y para mis suscriptores, bienvenidos de vuelta. One thing I still sometimes struggle with to this day as a non-native speaker is listening. But once I started to gain a deeper understanding of Spanish pronunciation, my challenges with listening scaled down from the entire language to dealing with certain regional dialects. Today's video targets the biggest pain points we as native English speakers have with the language. So let's dive right in. Firstly, Spanish is a phonetic language, which means that its pronunciation always matches its spelling according to standard pronunciation rules. Every letter has its own specific sounds depending on which letters come before or after, and understanding those rules behind those sounds gives us the power to automatically know how to spell any word we hear or how to say any word we read. Secondly, Spanish is a rhythmic language, better known as a syllable time language, which means that in most cases, every syllable holds equal time, which can make the language sound very fast to us English speakers, because we tend to stretch out our syllables in order to add emphasis. Spanish speakers don't typically do that. They usually only add emphasis with the tone of their voice. In Spanish, the vowels are the star of the show, and our consonants are the supporting cast. I'm going to teach you just about everything you need when it comes to vowels, but I feel it's much more important that we master the vowels over anything else. Our 5 vowels in Spanish are a, e, I, o, and u. A, I, o, u. A, I, o, u. These 5 vowel sounds will never change when these vowels are used by themselves in a syllable, but they can change when used with other vowels, which I'll get into shortly. Now, the first thing you need to know about pronouncing these vowels is the standard pronunciation rules with stressed syllables. I've already covered this numerous times in my conjugation series, but in Spanish, every word has only one syllable that's stressed. Whenever a word uses an accent mark, we always stress it there. For words without an accent mark, we stress the second to last syllable for all words ending with a vowel, N, or S. For all other words, we stress the last syllable. We have to be careful to always stress the correct syllable because if we don't, we can say a different word with a different meaning, which confuses the listener and works against our goal of fluency. Now, when one vowel is paired up with a second vowel, one of two things can happen. They can each hold their own sound and create 2 syllables, or they'll work together to form a single syllable, also called a diphthong. Up on the screen, you'll find every single diphthong in Spanish and their pronunciations. You'll notice that the vowels a, e, and o never pair up with each other at any point. These are what's known as strong vowels, and when they're used together, they each take up one syllable. For example, the verb caer, to fall, is 2 syllables. So, if a, e, and o are our strong vowels, that means I and u are our weak vowels. Also, y, or y, is usually treated as a consonant, but it's treated as a weak vowel when it follows another vowel. Diphthongs can either use one strong and one weak vowel or 2 weak vowels, but they always create one syllable that meets in the middle between those 2 vowels. So what the heck does that mean? Well, let's pick one at random from up on the screen here and test it out. We have u and e, which gives us we. Well, if we take our 2 vowels and repeat them one after another, let's listen for the sound when they meet up. Ue, 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 ue. An example of this is the word luego. Let's try another. We've got I and O, which becomes yo. So if we practice them together, that's io, 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 yo, used in bio. Let's try one more time. We've got a and I, which becomes I. So together, that's I, I, such as in I, from the verb haber. Again, the diphthongs are one syllable and only work when we have no more than one strong vowel. Hey guys, sorry for cutting in here real quick, but I actually realized while I was editing that there's a better way for me to explain this next segment. So diphthongs can and oftentimes do use accent marks in order to ensure that the syllable, the single syllable that's used, is the accented stressed syllable in a word. However, in order for this to happen, they need to follow one of two specific rules. Firstly, in a weak, strong vowel combination, we always have to make sure that we stress the strong vowel. If we stress the weak vowel, then that's going to break the diphthong and give us two separate syllables. So one example of this is with the word dia. Secondly, in a double weak vowel combination, we have to make sure that we stress the second weak vowel. If we stress the first weak vowel in a weak combination, that's also going to break the diphthong and give us two separate syllables. All right, let's get back to the lesson. Lastly, with our vowels, there are triphthongs, which are three vowels coming together to make one sound. And they always use a strong vowel in between two weak vowels. One example of this is the sound kitty cats make, which in Spanish is meow. Real quick before we get into our consonants, one thing you absolutely have to know is that in Spanish, when one word ends with an unstressed vowel and the next word starts with the same unstressed vowel sound, those vowels mash together and sound like one big syllable between the two words. This is part of the reason why Spanish sounds so fast to us, because they're pushing out syllables at a consistent rate and merging them together when the vowels between the words make the same sound. Okay, so that's everything we need to know about our vowels. So let's move into the consonants. Again, the vowels are the star of the show in Spanish, and the consonants don't require as much emphasis. For example, I have is tengo, not tengo, and I fall is caigo, not caigo. Consonants can often have a stronger or weaker sound depending on their placement in the word, but that's more in depth and calls for a separate video sometime. Firstly, when a consonant is paired up with only vowels next to it in a word, that's the first part of the syllable. So the two syllables in casa are ka-sa. When we have a consonant paired up with a second consonant, the first one is usually the end of the previous syllable, and the second one is the start of the next syllable, like with almorzar. However, when the second consonant is an R or an L, they usually work with the first consonant to make one syllable, like aplicar and refresco. Finally, when we have three consonants in a row, the first one is the end of a syllable, and the next two form the start of the following syllable, like with ombligo and desgracia. All right, now let's quickly go through the consonants that tend to give us English speakers the most trouble, starting at the front of the alphabet and making our way toward the end. Firstly, B and V, or be and v, have the same sound in Spanish, and it typically sounds more like the B sound. You'll actually notice that this oftentimes tends to cause misspellings among natives when they type or write, because the two sounds are indistinguishable to each other. Secondly, C and G, or se and he, both have a soft sound and a hard sound, depending on the vowel that follows. The vowels e and I call for a soft sound, and a, o, and u call for a hard sound. The soft se sound is identical to ese, or s, in most of the Spanish-speaking world. But in Spain, it sounds more like a th sound. And the hard se sounds more like a k, or ka. With he, the soft sound is like our H in English and shares the same sound as jota, or J. The hard he sound more like our G in English, but we don't swallow that sound as hard as we do in English. Just like with our be and v, when these letters share the same sounds as other letters in the Spanish alphabet, this easily leads to misspellings among natives. The H, or Hache, has two sounds in Spanish, and you can easily remember them by remembering the name of the letter. Most of the time, Hache is silent and carries no sound with it, except when followed by a se to give us that ch sound. Again, this silent Hache can easily lead to misspellings where it's left out of the word. Next, the double L or Y, or ege and ye, use the same sound, which sounds more like our Y in English, but various regional accents can put more of a j or even a sh sound on it. Again, these sounds are indistinguishable from each other and can often lead to misspellings. Alright, seeing as I'm already cutting into the video, I figured I might as well give you a quick rundown on ene and enye. So, the letter ene, or N in English, is going to carry the same exact sound as it does in English, just that N sound. However, whenever we see that little squiggle mark over the top of the letter, that's the letter enye, which carries that y sound immediately after the N sound. It kind of sounds like the word onion in English. It has that y sound right after. Okay, back to the lecture. Our last consonant I'll cover is the dreaded R and double R, or R and doble R. Now, these letters can trip up a lot of native English speakers to create that trill sound, which sounds kind of like a kid making machine gun noises, or maybe a cat purring. To make this sound, the best advice I can give you is this. This sound is created by fluttering the tip of our tongue between the roof of our mouth and the back of our front teeth. The noise will happen on its own simply by holding your tongue to the roof of your mouth and blowing air over your tongue, which will create that fluttering and give you that trill sound. Now, one thing English speakers often love to do is to show off that we can make this sound by over-exaggerating it. Don't do that. Just let it flutter that one time or twice for that single R or doble R. Remember, a dog is a perro, not a perro. Once you felt your tongue flutter the one or two times, stop pushing air and retract your tongue. This is going to take some practice, but you'll get the hang of it quickly, I promise. Our last consonant is Z, or zeta. Most of the Spanish-speaking world pronounces it like an S, but in Spain, it usually carries the same th sound as the soft se. Okay, so that's everything I've got for consonants, but there's one last thing I need to discuss before our practice round. Spelling changes to preserve pronunciation. In Spanish, when we conjugate verbs by changing the vowel sounds, the consonants used in the infinitive must always retain their pronunciation. Sometimes we need to change the spelling in order to accomplish this. Firstly, when a soft he goes from preceding an e or e to preceding an a, o, or u, it's swapped out for a jota. However, when the reverse is true, for hard he, we have to add an u to keep that pronunciation. Also, when a soft se comes before a, o, or u, we need to swap it out for zeta, and vice versa. When a hard se comes before e or e, we replace it with a ku and u. Finally, when the letter u precedes an e or I, it's silent, but when it comes before an a or o, it uses a w sound. So when we change a word to follow that u with an e or e, that's where these two little dots come in, and that tells us that the u is not silent, but instead has that w sound. Phew. Is anyone else feeling dizzy right now? That's a ton of info to go through in one video. So I recommend rewatching anything that you're confused about before we move on to our practice section. If you're ready to practice what you just learned, let's play that game from the beginning one more time, except this time I'll be using sentences instead of just one word. I'm actually going to have Austin de la Calle handle this next segment. He's going to give you a line from a song in Spanish, then you'll have to guess how many syllables it is based on what you know. Like always, these practice sections are open book, so go back and review as much as you need before deciding on your answer. Que mi gente, vengo a compartir un poco de música contigo para probar tus habilidades de pronunciación. ¿Estamos listos? Empecemos. ¿Cuántas sílabas tiene esta frase? 10. ¿Y esta?
Tu piel tiene el color de un rojo atardecer y es por ti.
14. Ok, finalmente, ¿qué tal esta frase?
Y yo estoy aquí, borracho y loco, y mi corazón idiota siempre brillará. Y yo te
25. Okay, so how'd you do? Did you get all the answers right? If so, you're well on your way to understanding and correctly repeating any Spanish you might hear. If not, that's okay. This is a process of retraining your brain on how to handle different sounds. So it's going to take a while. Just keep practicing and try your best to remember these rules going forward. All right, folks. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget about my conjugation spreadsheet giveaway. All you need to do is visit my post in the community tab and comment a suggestion for a future immersion exercise and like the ones that have already been posted, which you want Austin de la Calle to cover. Obviously, vote on your own comment too, by the way. If you want that spreadsheet now, you can use this QR code or the link in the description to buy it for $5 and support my growing channel. Comment if you have any questions about what I've covered today, and let me know if you have any suggestions for future lessons. Gracias por ver. Ciao.